Hey, it is Zennial Gamer, and oh man, I think I might need to splice together some outtakes from my last two attempts to record this video. So, obviously we're going to be talking about NB12 in this video, and before I jump into the storytelling, just want to throw it out there. I think the runes that I have on my monsters right now are going to be very late game runes for a lot of people. However, if you adjust for the fact that you don't need that much speed, they're probably somewhere around late mid game. So I think there's going to be a fair number of people who can build this team, but definitely not everybody can build this team. There are some variations that I'm going to show you with different monsters, but at a minimum, you are going to need Shayna, Sabrina, and probably Talia. There are some ways to get away without the Talia, but they're going to be much slower and maybe not as stable. I didn't test them as far. So, of course, I do plan on putting out more videos on all the dungeons over the next few weeks as we all continue to kind of theory craft on different free-to-play options. But for the time being, I just wanted to get out some speed team videos for the people who are able to make them with the first versions of the speed teams that I make. Now, as far as the storytelling goes, because this is pretty sad, the first time I tried to make this video, I sat there for, the entire run, full minute, explaining how great and awesome this team is, and then it failed. And I'm like, why did it fail? And so I go check the runes, and I realized that Crow was not runed. Now, I had just moved my entire rune set from Talia to Crow, except I accidentally moved it from Talia to Joltan, so I had a rage-built Joltan and an unruned Crow. Then I restarted the video, spent another minute talking about how great this team is. It failed again, and I'm like, why did it fail? And I realized that I was using the Talia that I had just moved all the runes from, so I took the wrong Talia out. And so I did 2 runs in a row with no runes. So, first tip for building this team, make sure all your monsters have runes. Okay, with that said, I think the theory craft here is pretty straightforward. It's a basic twins team. A lot of people are saying twins are no longer viable. I don't know yet how viable the twins are going to be in other metas, but they are, from what I can tell right now, still one of the most viable options for Necro. Now, I'll still have some other stuff to test with like Abigail and Shiwa, but there's so many different dungeons right now, I just wanted to get something up and running. So as you can see in the background, this is pretty stable, and it's been averaging... That first run we just did was, I think, a minute 13, which is about the slowest run I've had in 15 to 20 runs. So I've been between 52 seconds and a minute 13. I haven't had a fail when I had all the runes on the monsters yet. So early theory crafting so far, it could fail, but I see this to be an extremely stable team if you're able to match the stats. So with that said, let's take a look at the runes. Okay, so for this team, now before I show you guys the runes, I just want to give you a reminder, the Necro boss limits the attack speed of all allies. It's a passive that's kind of like Leo. So I have been told that the Necro boss has a cap of 150. However, the mid-boss minions appear to be 152 speed. And I know this because I built one Talia at 153 and one Talia at 151, and I got cut. So the actual minimum speed, assuming a max speed tower, is going to be 153 or maybe 152, because I didn't rebuild at 152. But it's one of those two numbers. So as you're running Necro B10, you need your slowest monster to be at least 152 or 153 speed. 153 is what I'd say go with to be safe, because I know that works. Now, with that said, you're going to see a lot of speed on these runes, so please remember you don't have to build the monsters these fast. I have them really fast right now for other dungeons. Remember also that if you're using this team, you can use a Talia lead, which means that you don't need the full 100 crit rate. You can get away with 76 crit rate if you're using the Talia lead. So that will lessen the rune requirements a lot as you're building this team. Now, with that said, we are going first with Shayna. And the role that Shayna serves, she's my AoE defense breaker to set up the Rakk to clear the waves for me. So you can see that if you adjust for her not needing to be this fast, and her actually only needing 76 crit rate, this particular set should hopefully be attainable to a lot of people. Now, according to the data miners, you need 54% accuracy for the Necro B12 boss. So with my Shayna's passive, I'm actually at 55%. She's the most important monster on this team to reach your 54% accuracy on. And then I do have her on Rage runes. You'd be fine to put her on Swift or Fatal or Violent or pretty much anything. You may not actually, I don't know exactly how much damage you need. Obviously, I said I've only done about 20 runs with this, so I haven't really tested for floors or ceiling. Now, after the Shayna, going second is going to be the Rakk. Again, you don't need this much speed. Your slowest monster on the team only has to be 153, so beyond that, just make sure your speed tuning in order. One big thing to remember, Rakk has 108 base speed. You want him to go second, and your speed tower is going to amplify that. So ideally, your Rakk will be a couple of speeds slower than your Shayna to make up for the speed tower. Now, you'll also notice I've only got 84 crit rate on him, and I'm not using a crit rate lead, so mine is not built perfectly, and that could account for some of that variability as well. Like that run where I had a minute 13, it was probably because Rakk missed the crits. So you do want to try and get your Rakk to 100 crit rate, or you could use, again, the Talia lead and run your Rakk at 76 crit rate, but just make sure he's critting 100% of the time. Now, again, you see I've got him in Swift. Violent is definitely a much better build for Rakk in this stage. If you can't do Violent, then Rage or Fatal are also both better builds. I'm in Swift again because I'm using Rakk in another dungeon. Now, with that said, taking a look at his stats, if you adjust down away with that speed, and if you bring him to 76 crit rate, hopefully these stats are going to be attainable, especially because you could do this in Fatal and get that 25% attack buff, for example, or do it in Rage and get a 40 crit damage buff. Now, going third is going to be our Sabrina, and remember, Sabrina's benefiting from the Shayna passive as well, so the 34 accuracy means 59, which means I'm exceeding that cap. All the same disclaimers I just gave about crit rate and speed apply, so once again, you can see that if you adjust everything else down, she has very little crit damage, very little attack. You'll also notice that the Rakk is very tanky. He doesn't have a lot of defense, but he's got a lot of HP. I didn't point this out earlier. Also, the Shayna, she's somewhere in the middle, I guess. So with all of these monsters, I targeted a minimum of 80,000 effective HP. Again, I haven't really tested for the bottom, so I don't know the exact number that's necessary, but I would shoot for 80 to 90,000 effective HP. Now, after the Sabrina is going to be the Crow. And so with the Crow, now this is the first set of runes that's probably going to be harder for people to replicate because I don't have a lot of efficiency and speed. I've got 100 crit rate, 190 crit damage, and plus 1700 attack. So I know this one's going to be a little tougher for people to replicate. You will notice that my Crow is very squishy, and I think that's going to cause me problems. I did notice him die once on already on that same minute 13 run, so I may need to adjust these runes, probably give up a little bit of damage and beef up the effective HP, again shooting for 80,000 plus. The other thing is his accuracy right now is pretty low at 25%. And then we finish off with Talia. So she's got my shield set. You always want at least one shield set in Necro. If you can get more shield sets, better. It's also nice to have some revenge sets. In terms of top times, in terms of best speeds, you're actually going to benefit by having more violent runes, except for your Talia and your Crow. Those two you definitely want on rage runes. Your Rakk could go Fatal, Rage, or Violent, any of those three. I like him on Violent, but he also does really well on Fatal or Rage. So when you're looking at your overall sets, and I'll put this on screen, basically you want your Shayna, your first choice for Shayna is going to be Violent, but really anything works. Your first choice for Rakk is going to be Violent. Fatal and Rage both work. First choice for Sabrina is going to be Violent. She's the one monster I think I do have in Violent right now. And then for Rage and Talia, for Crow and Talia, your strongest preference is going to be Rage. Now, between them all, it's nice to have 2 shield sets and 2 or 3 revenge sets, or you could mix in some fight sets. But none of that is really necessary, except you must have the one, or you should really have one shield set. If you can get more than one shield set, great. If you can get some revenge sets, great. But the one thing that's going to be really important is that shield set. Now, with those runes discussed, let's talk about your other alternatives. There are 2 other viable alternatives here. So I ran this team with a double Talia. And the second Talia, as I said, her runes were actually on the Crow. What I found with this team is it was 5 to 10 seconds slower than the Crow. And of course, most people are more likely to have a free-to-play Crow than a second fully max skilled Talia anyway. So I wouldn't recommend this as my primary option in this particular team. But it is a team that seemed to work and was stable. I did it for probably about 10 runs and it never failed. And then the last option is to go with your double Rakks. Now, if you're doing double Rakks, it does change the turn order a little bit, and these runes are going to be a little bit different. So once again, he does not need to be this fast. He's built for another dungeon. but you do want him to have the attack, the crit damage, and the accuracy, and again, his crit rate is really low. This particular team may actually have been faster than the Crow team if I had enough crit rate on the Rakk. So what we're going to do now is do one test run on this with the Talia crit lead. As you can see, the Shayna does the defense break. We get the 2 team ups from the Rakks, so the mid boss goes down quick and easy. Now right here, the Shayna derped. We actually needed the Chakram Crush, so that's going to slow this run down a little bit. But even so, it looks like we are hopefully... Yeah, we were able to clear the entire wave. Now, we did have a violent proc in there, I think. That's what allowed us to clear the wave. So the team up with the twins definitely helps to break the boss's shield here. One of the downsides is that if the Rakks are on cooldown on their skill 2, then they're only doing single target. The other downside is if they team up with each other, they're also only doing single target, which means the shield doesn't break as consistently. And that's why I found the Crow team to be a little bit better, because in that Crow team, we were using the Sabrina first in order to break the shield, and then we were getting big damage from both the Crow and the Talia. And the 2 sets of big damage together really added up. But so let's see what time we got here. 1:14, so as you can see, this is actually a much slower team. But it is definitely viable. If you happen to have 2 Rakks and you don't have a Crow, then that team would absolutely work. But overall, the team that I am strongly going to recommend, at least at this moment, I shouldn't say strongly going to recommend. Overall, the team that I have found that is best so far, 24 hours into the update, or 27 hours into the update, is the one that we have on screen. So this is the team that I'll be running for probably the next week or so as I continue to build out my other dungeon teams and then fix my monster box, because I've ruined every single monster in my monster box. But yeah, this is the team I'll be going with to start, and then of course I'll be theory crafting to look for both faster teams and more free-to-play friendly teams down the road. So guys, as always, I hope you found it helpful. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon. Hey guys, if you're still with me to this point, then that means that you probably liked the video, found it entertaining, or even better, both. So please smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave a comment down below, because those things help the channel grow, and more importantly, they show me that the video is useful, and that's the whole reason I do this in the first place.